Hello and welcome back to the Demis Hellen channel. In this video we're going to be looking at a different way to sidechain / volume shape, but without using sidechain or volume shaping. Okay, so we have two sub bases here. You can see we've got sub base, let's just call this 1 because it's going to make it easier to visualize later. Sub base 1, and we've got sub 2 there as well. So sub 1 is playing 8th notes, and sub 2 is playing quarter notes but 8th note in length. And if you've already sussed this out, sub 2 is our trigger for this sidechain technique. So I was watching an interview with Boris Brazier where this came from, and he says he doesn't use sidechain. So that got me thinking there's only one direction that you could potentially go with not using sidechain, which is volume shaping, but I don't think that's what he means. So I turned to phase. So phase has massive problems for people that are not fully understanding how phase works, how frequencies work, especially in the low end where they're a lot longer, and you get problems like kick and bass cancelling each other out, and you just get all these sort of like plethora of phase issues in tracks, and I see it all the time, and including myself, there was like a big learning curve of understanding phase. But with this, we're going to intentionally make phase issues. So if you look at this here, we can see sub 1, sub 2, but the difference here is sub 2 is flipped on the phase. So I flipped it 180. So for those that don't understand phase, if you have two of exactly the same sound on top of each other, you're going to get double the volume. It's going to be twice as loud. However, if you flip the phase, like we've done with the sub 2 channel there, you then oppose those two same sounds and they become cancelled out, or near enough cancelled out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and create exactly the same pattern on both, and I'm going to play these both at the same time. And what I'm going to do is load up my Megascope and watch what happens. You can see that it cancels out the bass. You can see a little bit leaking through, but you can't hear anything. There's two basses there, but if I remove one, there it is again. So what we can do here is, if we just shift this out of the way for a second, undo this. So we've still got that 8th pattern playing, but because we've only got a quarter note in an 8th length triggering it, you can see it's cutting it off for the first portion but allowing it to come through for the second portion. But it sounds a little bit awful, doesn't it? It has that horrible click on the end where you can hear it turning on and off. Now the secret to controlling this, I think, is a gate, and that is really simple to set up. On sub 2, if we load a gate into this, I'm going to use the Steinberg built-in gate, we can control how smooth that is turning on and off. And a gate is just literally a threshold. So when it reaches that threshold in volume level, it will let the gate open and the sound will pass through. And if it falls below that gate, it will close. But with this, we have attack and release control, so we can control how smooth that gate opens on either side, and we can create sidechaining using phase cancellation. And just before we carry on, it would be super interesting to hear from you in the comments whether you use this technique or you've heard of this technique before and used it before, but not all the time. Personally, I'm starting to like this. I've only used it today, but I've got and achieved the sound that I was looking for just by using this technique this morning. So what we're going to do is set this gate up. I've got a preset, so if you're a Patreon supporter on any of the tiers, you can get the preset for this if you're using Cubase Pro. So let's have a look at how to set this up. You're going to hear that it's a little bit smoother with this on. Let's just listen to it again with it off and then on after that first cycle. So we're starting to get that swell, which is what we're looking for, but we need to set a few things up. So I'm going to start with the threshold. I want to just up this threshold, or should we say reduce this threshold a little bit. So I'm just listening for that length of that note, and that's where it sounds consistent around -36. It's going to be different for you on different basses, but that works for me just there. So in theory, you should now be able to control the attack and release to create a smoother transition between the notes turning on and off. Now I'm going to take it one step further for a little bit more control. If you have a sidechain option in your gate, change the filter type to a high pass. So listen to this. It's a lot smoother. The bandpass doesn't make sense in this case, in my opinion. And then we can change the center position where the frequencies are triggering that gate. You can adjust the Q factor as well if needed. So all I'm listening for is how smooth it is. So you can see about 2 to 3 on the Q factor just adds a little extra smoothness on there because it's not as tight. And then we can go back to the attack and release and control that. So the release I tend to keep short because you want it to sort of like snap off like a sidechain does. It goes up and then it cuts off before it starts again. So you want it to drop pretty quickly. So choose your milliseconds wisely there. So we're achieving the sound we want, but we can just take it one step further and use it in sidechain mode, which is going to just yield slightly better results here. So clicking sidechain here, clicking on the cog icon to add a sidechain source, we want to choose sub 1. So sub 1 is set up. It should be 0 dB, but it's remembered from me doing this before. And that means that we're using sub 2 to trigger sub 1. So now we're going to get back to a bit of choppiness. And that's just because of the gate position. So I'm going to bring the gate position down now, that threshold. And there we are. We have sidechain using phase cancellation as our main source. So what I'm going to show you here is if we just switch to the mixer, we've got the gate loaded and the send loaded there. So that's what we set up in the other page. What I'm going to do is just turn this off and I'm just going to disable the send. So it's all off now. And I'm going to mute this channel and turn on LFO tool, which is doing sidechain. And I'll let you listen to both and then I'll switch the other one back on side by side. So I think you'll agree, they sound very similar. In my personal opinion, I like the phase option because I like to go down the route of showing you how you can do things with free tools or tools that you already have within the DAW, and everybody owns a gate in the DAW. They always come as standard. And if for some reason you can't find a gate in your DAW, you can download them for free as well. So what I'm trying to say is if you have a gate, you can sidechain your basses using that technique. So if you did enjoy the video, you know exactly what to do. And if you want to see more of my work, you know exactly what to do with that as well. And with that said, thank you very much for watching, and I will look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Take care.